Okay, we're live. Okay, I guess I can't know because I'm not on YouTube right now. Hi everybody, thanks for joining. Let's see, I'm gonna do a gouache demo today, and as you see from my screen, I've already sort of started prepping for it. I did a quick heavy paint color sketch because I like to figure things out a little bit before, and also kind of went ahead and sketched what I'm going to do. But I'm happy to talk over everything, and feel free to just shout questions at me or in our special event chat. I'll try to keep an eye on it. But again, everyone's free to just unmute, say hi. And yeah, so hopefully this will turn out well. We'll see. I was telling people I was a little rusty with gouache painting lately, but hopefully it'll come back. All right. So I picked this reference. I think it's from Arches National Park in Utah, which I went a couple months ago in wintertime. And I always love, if you guys are familiar with my work, I love doing fun, playful shapes. And there's just a lot of interesting shape language you can get with these like rock formations, and just I think Utah in general is just really, really awesome natural landscapes that are fun to paint and play with. And it was super unique to see it all in the winter time. So I'm going to attempt to capture this snowy kind of atmospheric landscape. Oh yeah, and I believe my theme is air, which I'm sort of interpreting as like atmosphere, mood, and a little bit of, well, I guess there's clouds, it's kind of overcast. Yeah, so I already figured out my sketch a little bit, and I always like to go for, you know, bigger, bolder shapes, and there's just like really cool, interesting, smaller, fun shapes with these like rounded rock things, whatever you want to call them. And I'm gonna try to push like this, like we have some haze or cloud going over these further back structures. So we'll see if I can get that with the gouache. Has everyone been successful with doing their Plein Aprils every day? Just curious.
Yep.
Yeah?
Totally.
Totally. Is that a sarcastic totally, or like, yes, absolutely?
Absolutely. Like very last minute sometimes.
Oh yeah, what was it called? Like the
11:59 gang. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I don't think I've ever gone up to that point, but I have been cutting it close for a little bit. Good to know. Hopefully everyone's also been able to keep up.
Franklin was with me at my 10:11 p.m. Plein April yesterday.
Oh no. Yeah, it can be kind of stressful trying to get it in every day. It's like the first thing I think of when I wake up in the morning. But I used to try to get it done like first thing in the morning, but then just sometimes timing does not work out. But it's okay. It's working from home actually kind of helps because I'll like sneak in a little painting while I'm supposed to be doing work. All right, laying in some soft washy color. I started using this rounded brush recently, because I used to all be about the flat brush, but I was teeing for Kevin McLaughlin's class, and he mostly used the round brush, so I thought I'd give it a try. And there's a lot of fun things I liked about it. It's a lot of softness and organic shapes that you can get that, I mean, you can get them with the flat brush too, but it's just something different also to do it with the round brush. And we want to bring in some of this blue sky. And I posted this reference in the event chat, so if you guys wanted to join me, feel free, or you can just paint your own thing. That's fine too. Letting everything bleed in a little bit. I always get very nervous about painting clouds. Don't know how it's going to go. but then sometimes it's just the accidents that are fun, and they can sometimes work out for you. So I'm going to push that back layer. It's covered in some clouds. Clouds, fog, I don't know what this is. And it's a bit overcast, so I'm keeping things, I think I'll keep things much cooler. This overall is a fairly cool palette.
Well, driving down to Big Sur, there's these clouds that look like fog. So
Oh yeah.
me and Luna would just name them Flouds.
Clouds?
Clouds.
I love that. Yeah. That's what I mean, driving up, because we drove up obviously from LA, and I also loved all the clouds and fog. Took a lot of pictures. I was considering doing one of those for the demo, but
Yeah, I'm doing one for mine.
oh, nice. I want to see that. Clouds. That's the word of the day. One thing I really love about painting is there's always like some little things that I really like to paint, and for me, I think it's like having the little tiny shapes, like these tiny little bushes against the big swatches of like land and color. So whenever I see something, I'm like, oh, I can't wait to paint the bushes or something, or like make tiny little dots against big swatches of paint. I don't know if you guys have like certain things you love painting or things that you don't like painting. I think for me that would be clouds. I get nervous with clouds. All right, so this, trying to figure out this, it's dirt, clay, rock color, orangey, burnt sienna. Gonna block all of that in at once so we can have that kind of warm underlayer that you see coming through. And I like doing that a lot, making sure there's some, like building up the layers. There's a lot of warmth in there. If I put like a warm underlayer, letting some of that peek through when I'm painting the layers on top. It gives it a lot of depth and complexity. And then sometimes it requires a bit of planning. Like, oh, there's certain colors I want to come through. White is also tricky. Usually I have to save that, and I guess I didn't do that. I just painted over everything. But sometimes if there's certain like white areas you want to definitely get in, you have to save that. But I didn't do that, so we'll just have to paint that in. Has everyone watched all the other demos that we've been hosting? I think this is the second weekend. Yes? No? Maybe?
Yeah, It's been super great. I can't make all of them, but I appreciate that. It's all recorded on the YouTube channel of Warrior Painters.
Yes.
Yeah, and I watched all of them. It's really helpful.
Awesome. It's great. Yeah, I think we have a good mix of digital and traditional. Yeah, looks like Sin asked, what's your favorite color straight out of the tube? I know people love opera pink. Oh, opera pink is a good one for sure. I have been liking recently, I cannot remember this color, but Jennifer Wong, I believe, was the one who introduced this color to me. So if anybody knows this color, please shout out. But it's this blue that I felt like was perfect for sky blue, and I always struggle with finding like a good sky color.
Is that the smart blue or something?
Oh yeah. I think you're right. Yeah. Small blue, right? Are you also a fan of this color?
Yeah, and I have that in my palette too.
Yeah. Yeah, for the longest time, I kind of just kept the same like palette that I've had since, I don't know, since school. And then very slowly, I like started introducing newer colors, maybe that I like borrow from or see other people have. Oh, I really want that color. I want to steal that, and then bring that in. Because ultimately, I feel like I only ever use a small amount instead of like all the colors. But once in a while, I want to switch things up.
Yeah, I think having some of your favorite colors, other than like the limited palette, is definitely interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And then you start to notice, like once you like follow people and know like, oh, this is this person's color palette. Like, oh, I want to use that color. It's almost like it's their personality or certain personality traits that they have. Like people have told me like, oh, your palette is very like happy and colorful and stuff. Which I guess my personality can be like that.
Yeah, I remember in school, I've just been following my instructor's palette the whole time. Like, I feel like that's the right way to do. Like, I never really experienced, like, I wouldn't buy a color that's not on the list.
Yeah.
Now, like, I'm not afraid anymore. Like, if I see a color that I'm willing to try it, I'll just buy it and see what happens. And if I don't like it, it stays in my drawer.
Yes.
Yeah. And if I like it, I'll just add it into my combination. So it's really interesting. I was just being really tight in school.
Yeah. I mean, I was the same way too. I was very much like, follow what the teacher tells you, do it this way, and like didn't really quite stray too far from it. But then like after school and then I think after a while you just sort of maybe get bored of doing the same thing. You're either plateauing and you want to switch things up a little bit. That's when I was like, okay, I'll try some new colors. Don't want to get stale.
Yeah.
So I've noticed it depends on the mood of the painting, but sometimes I'll paint a little bit more wet and washy, maybe because like the mood is very like this is a kind of moody. There's a lot of fog and atmosphere, while other times it's a bit more like dry brush, maybe a little bit more graphic. It all just depends on the mood. Okay, I need these to dry a little bit before I go over everything. I think I might have made those distant rock structures a little bit too light, but I'd rather make them too light and then keep going over them versus them being too dark and having to lighten them, which can be trickier. Because gouache, as you know, never dries the same value as when you thought you put it down. A little bit wet still. Okay. I also realized I need to get some new brushes because some of my brushes fell apart yesterday. I didn't even know they could do that. But let's see. Let's get these darker, more rock structures that are closer to us, a bit more tied down. And again, I'm thinking about warm and cool. Right now, everything has that warm underlayer, but I want to bring in some of the cool tones because that's just how I want to interpret this atmosphere and how the rocks look to me. And I'm also still looking at my heavy paint sketch because that helped me figure out some of my colors a little bit. Like, oh, do I want to push this more purple? Do I want to push this more pink? And it's fun to have another way to, because sometimes it's harder. I don't want to do another gouache painting before this, but with heavy paint, I could have just quickly laid everything in and figured things out. Also, I need to make sure I'm keeping this on camera, so let me know if things start to move out of frame, because that can happen sometimes. And another thing with getting the sketch done before is being able to push some of those shapes, which I want to try to keep that going too, because sometimes I will tend to maybe be too married to the reference when instead I want to push things a little bit more, simplify things, make it more my own versus like a direct one-to-one copy of the reference. Which I've been finding simplifying helps a lot. Like with a lot of my recent studies, I've been going super simple. One for time, but also it's just, I think it's just so much more effective when you can go simple, say a lot without, say a lot with less, basically. Kind of like what I've been really into. Round shapes. Someone watching a movie or a show in the background.
Doodling, Doug, I muted you because we could hear your movie. Want to if you want to mute yourself, let me know and I'll unmute you after.
Thanks, Angela.
Yeah.
Yeah. Has anyone here been to Utah or any of the national parks there?
No, but I want to. They're on my list.
Oh yeah, highly recommend. Especially because I've been there in like, well, not winter time, maybe in the fall, and that's totally different than going in the winter, obviously. But both are really beautiful.
Zion's in Utah, right? I'm not crazy.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. I've been there.
Zion's awesome.
Yeah. I went to the Narrows and that was so fun.
Oh, you did the Narrows walk. Yeah, I've done that.
That's so my family didn't want to go all the way in, but I wanted to because I loved like wading in the water. I guess it was so different from like all the other hikes, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I've done that walk too. I don't know how far you can go in, but obviously you can go all the way. But it's so unique because usually you're not hiking in a river when you're going on a hike. Super cool.
I don't know if you guys know about Lone Rock Reservoir.
No, where's that?
I think that's in Colorado, but they said that it used to be filled with water, but now the rock is just on its own because there's too many people moving to the west. So all the reservoirs are like drying up.
Oh, whoa.
So, yeah, we should go see it before it disappears.
Okay. Yeah, I'm down. Angela always finds the coolest places. I don't know how you find everything.
I mean, there's like you find really cool places too. So
I don't know. You come up, you're like, oh, look at this. Oh, cool. Like, where did you hear about this?
Thank you, awesome. Instagram.
That's true. Instagram kind of makes everybody, I think it's exposed people to a lot more places, which is great, but also makes them a little bit more crowded.
Yeah, I really like that RV park we went to in
Dark Sky.
Wait, that one. That was so, like when you woke up, you could just see the.
Oh yes, in Monument Valley. Oh yeah. That was amazing. Yeah, I didn't realize that RV parks could be so cool, and depending on where they're located, you can have really amazing views that maybe you wouldn't get at like an Airbnb outside of the parks.
Yeah, just be sure to avoid Kaylee because she snores.
Damn. And Kaylee, I don't know if she's on here. She's probably muted and cannot respond back.
She was like, "Oh my god, this is a live stream."
Yes, everybody gets to hear recorded forever. as I'm painting this, I'm already thinking about how I can't wait to do the bushes. What's those cool, kind of very, I don't know what color that is, like neutral grayish, cool green bushes. And they have the little snow sprinkled on top, but those will be a lot of fun to pop on here.
Oh, Abe wants to ask you a question.
Oh,
So while painting simple, do you still try to paint more loosely, or do you try to make the individual big shapes as perfect as they can before moving on to the next one?
That's a really great question. It really depends on what I'm going for. If I want to do something really graphic and that's like important to my design, then maybe I will think a little bit more of the shapes and making sure it's like reading clearly. But I try not to think about making things perfect, because part of the wonderful thing about painting traditionally is like the imperfections you can get just from your brush strokes. But in terms of like making like sharper shapes or something, if I want to bring something closer to the foreground, then yeah, maybe I'll sharpen the edges a little bit more, while something that's further back, I'll let them be, like the edges be lost, just because that'll push it back, give you some more depth. I'm going to reread your question a little bit to make sure I'm answering it. But I tend to paint looser to tighter, if that makes sense. But also, I think it's important to have a variety versus having, if everything is super loose, which can be a stylistic choice, like more something that's more impressionistic. That can also work, but I prefer to have like a little bit of variety and creating some contrast. So looser versus tighter brush strokes. I think if your painting is a lot more visual interest and gives you things to look at, versus if everything was super tight versus everything was super loose, your eye may not necessarily know where to look. Hopefully that answers your question. Oops. Oh, and there you go. I just made it. I just accidentally dropped my paintbrush and now I have paint on it. But that's okay. I'm not too worried about that. I can try to dab some of it off or paint over it later. Or maybe I'll turn it into something like a tree or another rock formation. So that's the thing. You can't let things be too perfect, because things like this can happen. Or I'm just a little bit clumsy. Yeah, that was a great question. Keep them coming, guys, if you have anything that pops up. I'm just trying to design some interesting, like, darker shadow shapes on here. It's my background, or as I work as a designer in animation, I always like to think about, it's just, I can't help it, I'm thinking about design a lot when I'm doing these paintings. And usually that means having a lot of contrast, some big shapes versus smaller shapes, making sure there's a variety, straights versus curves. All of these things I'm kind of thinking or have in the back of my mind of how I can make this more interesting, read better, etc.
She said thank you, or they said thank you for answering.
You're very welcome.
Where's your next trip gonna be?
I don't know, Angela, you tell me. Where are we going?
I found this this kayaking fishing trip where we can catch our own halibut. And
Ooh.
I'm kind of interested in that, but I don't know if you would want to kayak and fish. It seems kind of dangerous.
Kayak and fish at the same time. I kayaked. What kind of water is it?
I'm sure they're gonna let us go only when the waves are calm, but it looks really fun.
Okay.
We can go with Outdoor Chef Life and his buddies.
Oh, okay. Does everybody know Outdoor Chef Life? That's his YouTube channel, right? Outdoor Chef, something like that. But he's this really cool YouTuber who forages for like anything really. there's sea life, and then he cooks. He's basically like been Angela's inspiration for a lot of our foraging trips. Like when we went to get uni up at Half Moon Bay, which is awesome.
Why do you like traveling? Does it like help you, I guess, get re-inspired?
Yeah, for sure. There's so many things. Getting re-inspired, getting a new perspective. Sometimes I like being at home, but sometimes you do get a little cooped up doing like the same thing, so you do need to get out, experiencing and trying new things, hanging out with your friends. Obviously, it's a lot of fun. It's just something I've always loved, and I love getting to share like these experiences with people. And it's cool that I can bring art to it too. So, well, though I don't think I painted on my last trip, but there's the opportunity to paint and capture like all these like beautiful new places. It's great.
And eat a lot of food.
Oh yeah. Oh, how could I forget that? Food is so important. Food is a huge part of why I love traveling.
I like how Vaughn just calls like putting like bread spread, installing it or
Right. What were we doing? We were installing was it Vegemite on toast. Our Kirsty, our Australian warrior painter, brought it's Vegemite, right?
Yeah,
Vegemite for everybody, which I don't hate. I don't know. Has everyone had Vegemite? It can be controversial, depending on where you're from. But I didn't hate it. You like it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just super salty.
Wait, is it gluten free?
I think it's just yeast, so it's fine.
Okay. Well, obviously, if you tried it.
Yeah. I didn't get sick, so it's fine. Lynn asked, do you plan trips internationally to paint plein air or let it happen organically, or more take photos and paint them when you're back?
Ooh, that has sort of changed. I have had trips that were like intentionally for painting. It kind of depends on who you're with too, because if you're with people who are not artists, then you kind of don't want to be the person like, oh, stop, I'm just going to paint for a couple hours, and well, they may want to go do things. So yeah, if you're maybe traveling with people who are also artists, and part of the intention is that it's a painting trip, then yeah, for sure, I'll do that. But lately, I haven't been painting quite so much when I travel, but I have in fact been taking a lot of reference photos. And for plein air pole, then I have like a ton of things that I can draw from. But yeah, it kind of depends. I also sometimes don't want to just paint. I also want to just maybe relax or just experience this new place. And sometimes painting can be a little bit stressful. But it depends. There's different kind of trips for everybody. But I highly, if like painting and doing plein air on a trip is something that you're really interested in, I highly recommend people do that. But also consider who you're going with, or go solo. If you just travel by yourself, you can do whatever you want, right?
Yeah, I'm lucky because Kaylee's patient and she lets me paint sometimes, but I try not to take up too much of her time.
No, also Kaylee is a great painter. I remember seeing her digital paint. She did or she painted on the iPad before. I was like, holy crap, Kaylee!
Her first one. Good thing she's not doing art, guys, or else we won't have a job.
Be screwed. Kaylee, she's a beast. She can do it all.
She can. Lynn said thanks. She agrees it can be stressful. They're just thinking about taking all the painting supplies on a hike, and it feels like a lot.
Oh yeah, that's a big factor. Like when you want to travel light, but I also want to I want to go on this cool hike, but I can't carry all this stuff that would just weigh me down. So sometimes it just becomes one or the other, or picking like this is a smaller, easier hike, so I can maybe spend more time painting, versus like, oh, this is definitely for hiking. I don't want to be painting and carrying all my gear. But sometimes I want to do both because both is fun.
Well, when you're in a location like that, let's say it looks really cool, but it's kind of troublesome to get to, like, how do you convince yourself or mentally prepare yourself to?
Oh, I think it helps if I have other people with me that are like, yeah, we're gonna go here and paint this. If it was just me, I might just be like, I'm just gonna hike, or I need the influence and the motivation from others to help me, for sure. Like Angela.
Oh my god, I've been pretty lazy. I just bring my fishing gear now, so
which is
not me.
quite a lot to bring. A lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But that's a cool question. Great question. I don't think I've gone on like a specific painting trip in a while. Maybe I should do that.
I can't imagine like 10 hours of like painting.
Actually, yeah. And that's a good point, because you do get burnt out and exhausted if it's just like, straight out painting for the entire day.
Yeah.
You do need to relax a bit. So maybe that's a good thing. Don't want to go overboard. I'm starting to add in some more of these darker layers so I can push back the rock formations in the back. And as usual, I'm thinking of everything as like a big, simple shape. Which atmosphere, whenever there's like cloud and atmosphere, that kind of helps kind of filter out all the details because of everything. Actually, I find it very difficult to paint. Let's say if this was in broad daylight and you kind of see every shadow, all the textures and stuff, it can get a little bit overwhelming. So I think this is a little bit easier because some things get a little bit lost in the fog, and you don't have that tendency or want to focus all your attention onto it. And it also takes a little bit of self-control to not over detail things. Because especially when you're painting from a reference, you see everything. Like, oh, well, I got to capture this shadow here, this rock here. Versus like when you're out painting plein air, maybe there's the lighting change. You're getting too hot. You don't want to stay out there the whole time, so you have to move a little bit more quickly. You can't noodle and get caught up in certain details. I might be noodling a little bit, but see. I'm really glad it's not 100 degrees right now, as it was like 2 days ago. I'd be dying during this demo. But thankfully, it feels really nice.
It's gonna be like 90 again next week. So.
What? No, it's still spring. Oh, I feel like I can't complain because other people, like we in LA, generally have nice weather. Well, let's say you're living somewhere that's a lot colder. It's definitely a lot harder to go out and paint. But okay, we get sensitive with heat too. So April is a good time to do plein April, I think. Spring, generally the weather's okay, at least in here for Southern California. I'm also excited about getting those little, what should call them, little swatches of snow that are covering the top. I think those will be fun. First, I gotta nail down these bigger, darker values before I can get to the small fun stuff. What's everyone else painting right now? I see Angela asked if there's works in progress. Feel free to post if you got any. I always feel a little bit nervous about posting my whips. I feel like I have to make a disclaimer. Work in progress, work in progress. Don't judge me. Looking at this little accident I made to see if I should paint over it or turn it into something else. We'll see. Maybe I'll paint over it because I kind of like the composition I have. Whoa, Erin. Oh man. Erin is so good with what would you call it? These tree branches. Like I remember you always killing it with the naked tree branches. You're so good at painting those. Well done. Is this somewhere near you?
Me. Hi. This
Hi.
is actually in France.
Oh, it's France.
I studied there a long time ago in college. So I'm going through some photos and picking out things I like.
Oh, that's fun. Where in France?
Somewhere in the south of France. I don't remember what town this was that we visited. We took like a little day trip somewhere, but the campus was in Provence, so somewhere around there. There was this cool like cove with this pool of water, and yeah, it was just beautiful.
So cool. I visited France, I think, when I was in high school. We did like a little tour. So pretty. I wish I spoke French, though. I think that would have helped.
Yeah, I definitely wish I spent a little more time learning that before I went there. But
Right.
yeah, France is great. I would love to go back sometime.
Yeah. That also would be well, it is a cool everything trip. You could paint, eat, just visit, see the sights. It's got everything.
Yeah, it's really got everything.
I gotta be careful with these little shadow shapes that I'm putting in because I have noticed whenever I paint these rocks, if I go a little bit overboard, it can get kind of messy. So trying to think about design, big versus small shapes, making sure they're a little bit more randomized, so we're not looking at too much at once. Yeah, keeping them pretty graphic, I think is a good way to go. Oh, cool! People are posting more. Nice. These are great clouds. Also very simple, graphic. Oh, awesome. Wow, Kelsey, you went a lot further than I did, but that looks great. You also made it more, I don't know if it's sunny, but not as overcast, but I like it. I like it a lot. I always like seeing whenever I do these demos, when other people are painting along and seeing their interpretations. Everyone does such cool stuff, and everyone kind of sees things a little bit different. And I'll be like, oh wow, I didn't even like. I love how you capture this shadow or something. It's cool to see what people kind of like zero in on. Kind of like the little that really bright orange underlayer coming through, but I know I'm gonna have to paint over it with some snow, or maybe I don't. There's something nice with like that kind of more saturated, warm variation coming through. Feels like it's on fire. Okay, this thing. What am I gonna do with you? Almost looks like something exploded. Maybe there was an explosion in the back.
Or like a cactus.
Oh yeah, yeah. I thought about that. Maybe we could turn it into a plant, but this would have to be a cactus. Who knows? Maybe it is. Yeah, that's another thing with painting that I'm still trying to get better at is the scale of things, and it also has to do with how you're designing. Because I'll find sometimes I'll make things if the scale is off, then it just kind of throws off the whole painting a little bit.
Yeah, it's in the background, huh? If it's a cactus, it would be like a super
I know.
cactus.
It'd be enormous. Well, maybe this is a fantasy landscape where the cactus are really big. Who knows? I mean, it's your own painting. You can kind of decide what you want to do. Well, I'll just paint over it for now, and then I'll probably have to keep fixing it because this is probably going to come out a lot darker. Yeah, I feel like a lot of gouache painting is like me trying to predict what it's going to do, and then it doesn't do what I want it to do, and then I have to go back and like fix things, but that's okay. That's part of the fun, right? Okay, so we have a lot of warm and cool oranges, and I want to get those cooler green bushes. It's kind of rare to see that color because they're covered in snow. It makes them feel a little bit more gray. Not a lot of, it's like the saturation was turned down. And then just some like warmer green bushes. I think that'll be nice to make them have some variety in greens versus everything just being, if they were just like the same cool gray. I'm always looking for opportunities to bring variety, some small pops of color to make things interesting. Ooh, that is a very bright green. So to neutralize the green a little bit, I might bring in a little bit of red. So it becomes more of like a grayish color. Since red is the complement. Let's see. And I'm always testing things like, oh, I'll put it down. If it's working, I'll keep going. And if not, I'll just try something else. I try not to get too caught up in like mixing the perfect green, mixing the perfect color, because it's really all context if it works in your painting. And it's okay if you want to push things. I want to push this a little bit cooler, a little warmer, to be a little bit flexible. Oh, cool. Caroline and Imagina did a more like, I like the kind of washy look of this painting. Oh no. There you go. I shouldn't click things when I'm streaming, then I freak out. Okay, so I don't want the screen to be quite so bright. I think the further back it is, it should be a little bit more subtle. Kind of blends into those rocks a little bit. I'll try that. And then further back, I don't want to get too caught up in making like perfect little bush details. Further back, things can be a little bit looser. So I'll just kind of dot the landscape with these. And I can always go back, adjust. If I don't like it, maybe paint over it. And thinking about design, like bushes are also a good, especially if there's like a lot dotting the landscape, a good way to help like lead your eye when you're figuring out your composition. So if I'm seeing like, oh, kind of a lot of the bushes are making this sort of wave gesture. Maybe I can lead my eye this way, have them pointing in a certain way. These are all kind of design tools that you can use to make your composition better, make it more interesting. I always like bringing more movement and making compositions more dynamic, kind of, I guess, the way I like to paint, kind of the way I like to draw and design too. And if there's a way to do that with something that's just like a still moving image, but if you're able to create a lot of movement inside, I think that's pretty cool. And that dry brush look works for these bushes. It's actually kind of perfect. So thinking about direction. And scale. Things closer up to us will be larger, and then we'll get smaller as we go further back. And it's always important to group things. Like I would kind of group these all together. There's also, when I was doing this in heavy paint, a brush that kind of gave the perfect dry brushy look. I forgot which one it was, but every time I use it, I'm like, yes, this is for bushes, perfect for bushes. I think it was like a radial line tool or something. And I'm noticing everything right now is kind of similar in value. So I want to bring in, maybe there's a bush here. I want to bring in a darker value to kind of give some visual interest so everything doesn't look the same. Just block that in very quickly. Maybe design the shapes a little bit. So it's kind of interesting. And I made it a little bit too big, but it's okay. Okay, so I've been kind of avoiding this, but the snow was something important that I wanted to capture. Also, I realized since even though the theme is air, I think I was focusing a little bit more on other elements, but that's okay. There's air. There's air in here, I promise. Whenever I'm painting something white, I want to think about what temperature it is. If this is a cooler white, a warmer white, it makes a really big difference versus just putting white straight from the tube. I think white straight from the tube, depending on the context, comes off a little bit cooler. So I may want to tint it a little bit if I'm wanting something warmer. But since for this painting, I want more of a cooler white, just because I want to give more of that overcast atmosphere look to everything. Let's see. And then white, depending on how thick you're applying it, is not necessarily going to dry as white as you think it is coming straight from the tube or as you mix it. So that may require a little bit of adjusting. Kind of just testing how it looks for now. Is this as light as I wanted? Do I want to go darker? Do I want to go cooler? I think I like it so far, but we'll see. Once it dries, I may do something completely different and I just have to go back, adjust it again. And I want to think about the design of it too, versus just like randomly placing it. So I'm noticing that the snow is helping describe the form of our landscape because we have it's kind of wavy curves down here. So I'm going to use that as an opportunity to help describe the landscape a little bit more, help you define whether it's like a curvy shape, whether it's flat. I think that's another useful tool you can use. And then there's areas where it's like a little bit more dense, so the white will appear a lot thicker, maybe a little bit brighter, versus when it starts to kind of taper off and it's darker, maybe a little bit more gray. It's kind of, I think, doing this thing. What you see my brush, so I'm kind of going to follow that motion, say paint. This area is pretty cool, just like this level or layer of white snow.
Hey.
Hello. So these little, oh wait, let me find this a little bit more. I like when they go to little dots. So these little snow caps, I want to make sure I get right. And then back here, they're kind of getting lost in the fog, so I don't want them to have too much contrast. Otherwise, they're just going to stand out too much. So I'm going to bring in a little bit of that kind of purpley gray. And again, it's another opportunity to like lead your eye, create a direction, which already it's kind of doing in the landscape. And you don't always have to be married to the reference. So if I wanted, I could put snow in different areas as long as it serves my composition and my design. I want this to go down a little further. And I really like these little pockets of snow, kind of creating graphic shapes. I think those are cool. It's also the snow layer. A little bit thicker than what I wanted, but okay. I almost wish I had a slightly thinner brush because I'm getting a little bit clumsy. Usually I like to work with a bigger brush until it's just impossible for me to get the kind of strokes that I want. There's I'm going to contrast some of these, the bigger, thicker snow layer with like this tiny little slither, which I think helps a lot. I need to remember to squint, see if there's any problem areas. Comes so small in the distance, it's just little dots. I'm looking at this and wondering, why does it look so off? And I think it's because I don't have any shadows under my bushes, or there's not a lot of contrast. So maybe it's not super clear what they are. Let's round that out a little bit.
Hi, Michelle. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, absolutely. I was about to be like, does anybody have questions? You guys are so quiet.
Okay, yeah, I didn't want to interrupt. Thank you for doing this, first
Yeah,
off.
of course.
I was gonna ask, I'm pretty new to gouache, and I don't know, I came in a little late. I'm not sure if you said anything about this, but I'm pretty new to gouache. I was wondering if you had any tips for dealing with, I know that it comes out much darker. It comes out darker usually than what you expect. So I was wondering if you had any tips for dealing with that.
Sure. So it's not just that it comes out dark. Then when you're putting down something light, it dries darker than what you want, and then when you're trying to putting down something dark, it dries lighter. It's like everything goes to a middle tone, and part of it has to do with like how much water is in there, and you kind of have to, like, at least for me, I have to anticipate it a little bit, like knowing like, okay, this light value that I'm putting down is probably gonna dry a little bit darker than what I want. So I'm gonna compensate for that by like going even lighter. And sometimes you'll hit the right like tone that you want. Sometimes you won't. But I don't get too fussy over that because I know with gouache you can always like paint over things. It's pretty forgiving and that you can like layer things over, and so you can always like fix and adjust things. So it's kind of like a constant, like you put something down, check if it's right, and then adjust versus you trying to nail the right color, the right value, all at once, because you won't. You're just it's gonna depend on what color you're putting it next to, how wet the paint is and stuff. So it's just like a constant like dance of adjusting, putting things down, testing and stuff. Does that make sense? Does that help?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
And then after doing it for a while, you kind of realize it didn't turn out what I want. And you probably saw me doing that, but I can make this work, or I will adjust something else and make it work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the fun thing about it. It's things you can get some like unexpected things. But great question.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's definitely nice that it's more of a forgivable medium.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I was looking at my composition and I felt it was just so awkward to have this big dark shape here. So I'm gonna try to add some other ones so it's a little more interesting. And then annoying thing about gouache is that once you mix your color and then if you want to go back and try to remix that same color, it's so hard to try to get it. So when I'm looking at my greens, like, oh, I wish I mixed more of that green, because now if I want to try to add more of the same kind of cool gray green, it's going to be a little tricky, but it's okay. You guys must be so enraptured with my demo, or very, very absorbed in your paintings. A quiet crowd.
No, I really have just been watching.
Okay, cool.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
Do you have any interesting plein air painting stories?
Ooh, let's see.
I'm always interested because I live in a place that doesn't have very many people, so I don't really run into anybody when I do my paintings. I'm usually by myself, but I love hearing other people's stories.
Oh man, because I mean I've done it for so long, and I guess I'm usually painting with a group. But why am I blanking? I see Vaughn in here. Wait, yeah. Do you remember any stories? I don't know if he's listening. Because I definitely feel like I've run into interesting.
Let's see. Well, Ramon, our friend, has gotten in a fight with a homeless person
Oh no.
down by the river, and
But that's Ramon. He always somehow he attracts interesting characters. Just that's just who he is. So he has some pretty wild stories when he's out painting.
and what else? I've also run into some homeless people. Well, there was one guy in Pasadena who ended up finding me on Instagram and everything, and he was an artist too, and he like left for a while. Or he saw me painting, he sat down next to me, we're talking, and then he's like, "Oh, I'll be right back," and he left and came back with this giant binder full of drawings. I don't know from where, but it was huge. Like all the drawings he had all in one huge folder, and that was kind of nice. And he was eating cake for lunch. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I find people they won't approach you if you're in a group, but they'll definitely, or more people may approach you if you're just painting by yourself.
Oh, that's a good point.
So maybe you'll get more interesting stories if you paint by yourself versus in a group.
I'll have to go try and find more people.
But of course,
you guys have a goat lady that talked to you?
Oh yeah, that was actually here in Glendale. I think we were painting by the river, and then this woman with like 4 goats walks by. Her name was also Michelle, and she was like, "Whoa, what are you guys doing?" And she was telling us she does like these special goat events, like goat yoga, goat life drawing, like goat therapy, like all these. I guess companies do special team bonding events, and then some of them involve goats. So she's telling us like she does that kind of stuff, and if we ever wanted to like have some kind of drawing or paint session, she'd be down, and we did do that. We arranged for her to bring her goats out, and we tried to paint them. It was a little bit difficult because they were like moving around a lot. So it was I think mostly just trying to sketch them. But oh yeah, I totally forgotten that. Sometimes you run into goats. Oh, and then she was saying her goats are like celebrities or something because they've been in commercials. So maybe you've seen her goats on a commercial. I've never done goat yoga though. I don't know what that entails. If it's like, are the goats like running around with you? Are you doing moves on the goats? I don't know. That sounds interesting.
Learned about goat yoga like 3 weeks ago, and I had to look up a YouTube video. I think people are trying to do yoga, and the goat just jump around. Sometimes they're on you.
Oh,
Sometimes they're just doing their thing. It looks adorable though.
it does look really cute. Yeah. I don't know if it's like it's probably not actually beneficial in terms of like yoga practice, but maybe it's just like a fun thing that you can say you've done.
Yeah, I think it's more fun.
I had a friend who did it once, and she said the instructor had to warn them the goats were not potty trained.
Oh,
my god!
They're like,
oh
climbing
no!
on you. Yeah.
Oh
She said it
no!
was still really fun though, and definitely.
Aw, that's good. That's good. I don't know how I feel about that though. I don't really want goat poop on me when I'm doing yoga. But cool. That's cool.
I have a lot of painting stories about weather. I like to paint with watercolor, and when I go hiking in Colorado, I like to paint above tree line, and I feel like I can almost use the paint as a barometer because it won't dry when it's gonna rain.
Oh yeah, I had that experience in Seattle when we were in Mount Rainier and trying to paint. But yeah, like I think my painting the rain just washed my paint, and I was like, I can't do this.
And I would get this one time I was above tree line and I got so focused on what I was trying to paint. And when you're in the mountains, you can't see what's on the other side of the rocks. And this huge storm was
Oh
on
no.
and you're above tree line and it's all this like lightning and it started to rain and I was like, why is my paint not drying? And then these clouds came over. I was like, oh, that's why.
Ooh, did you get stuck in this rain?
I hiked up there and so I had to run down and I'm running and I didn't want to ruin the painting, so I'm like running with it like with my arms out and under my raincoat with the painting under the flap of my raincoat and it paint got all over me and I was so sad.
Oh no, but I love that because your priority is save the painting. Like you
Yes.
can get wet, you can get paint, but no, save the painting.
I must have looked like such a fool running down past all these mountaineers like, with my coat out like a bat trying
Yeah.
to paint.
Yeah, that's hardcore, but that's why you're a warrior painter. You paint in all the weather conditions. Yeah, luckily we don't have rain is not something we deal with that much here in LA. So, but yeah, I just remember being in Seattle. I was like, oh, how am I going to do this? There's too much wetness, too much rain. Okay, I don't want to spend too much longer on this because then I'll start getting into noodle territory. But I have to bring in some more variety of greens so everything doesn't look the same. Oh yeah, shadows. Or some shadows. Like Charlie asked, how do you deal with paint drying different colors? I kind of explained that a little bit earlier, but it's just something that you have to anticipate and constantly be adjusting. I think after you paint for a while, it'll become a little bit more second nature to you, knowing what to expect and then knowing how to adjust to what you want to do. But yeah, it's a bit annoying. A lot of people, when they start off gouache, they're like, why is it doing this? It's not drying what I want it to be. But after a while, I think it's actually quite nice. You get some happy accidents, or you might get some different colors that you weren't expecting. This down. And I want to bring in more of a warmer shadow to these because it's an overall like cooler day, but I think it'll make these cooler bushes pop more. And it's kind of what I did with my heavy paint sketch earlier, which I've sort of been following, sort of haven't actually forgot to look at it for a little bit, but it's nice to be reminded sometimes of like interesting color choices you can make. And Sean's question, when you're painting ambient light, how do you deal with shadows? That's exactly what I'm talking about. It's kind of tricky because you don't get like hard shadows necessarily, like when it's maybe high noon. But I think you can take this opportunity to maybe push the colors a little bit, because everything's kind of feels like a gray anyway. But I always like whenever you have grays, pushing things a little bit, whether it's warmer or cooler. So as I was saying, like if we have these cool bushes, I want to push the shadows a little bit warmer. But I don't want to have too much crazy contrast because that it is, as you pointed out, like an overcast ambient lighting, where you can bring some nice kind of subtle shifts that you may not get with something with more like a high noon, high contrast day. But that's an excellent question, because I think ambient and overcast days are always really tricky to paint because it's like not as obvious what the colors are and what you're looking at. But I think that just gives you more opportunities to play. That's what's the fun part about this. And I don't want to go too overboard with these cast shadows because they're not very strong anyway. And I wouldn't go too far back either because you wouldn't even see them, but maybe just a little bit, just a tiny bit. And I'm not being too precise, so just giving a hint of a little color shift. I'm kind of lazy when it comes to painting. There's a lot of things I'll just leave out or not detail too much if it's not important. There's a lot of commotion going on downstairs. Hopefully you guys can't hear it. I think it's my roommate's parents are here, and there's always a lot of commotion when parents are here. Okay. I don't want this to just stand out too much. Let's see, I hope I don't ruin it. This bush, just like this block of green here. Maybe I'll soften the edges a little bit. There's always a risk of messing it up. Too wet. I don't know if I like that. hopefully it dries a bit lighter than that. Just want to vary the green just a little bit in here. Maybe bring in some of that purple shadow color. Blue. Okay, I think I'm gonna call it for now. I might do some little touch-ups later, but ooh, let's do this. Gotta do the best part, which is getting the tape off. Somehow it's never graceful when I do it on camera, guys. Yeah, and thank you guys all for joining me today. This was a lot of fun to paint. I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out, but I think I'm pretty happy with it. And if you guys also did paintings, please share them. I want to look at what you guys did. But yeah, here we go. Today's Plein April, which was air.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you,
Thank
Michelle.
you, Michelle. It
Thank
looks
you,
awesome.
Michelle.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.